Hi, and welcome to Transparent with Tina. I am Tina Marx, your host. So, this week has been really heavy with what's going on in the world between the pandemic and with our government. Today, I'm going to be talking to an educator. He is a dean and he's also a counselor in the school system. I really want to ask a lot of questions on how this is affecting our children. There's so much news out there about suicide and depression, and we always think about the adults, but what's happening with the kids? Tune in and find out. Up next, Dr. N. And here he is. Welcome, Dr. N. How are you today?
Awesome. Doing fantastic. Couldn't wait for our show. And
good. We had some technical issues just now with the recording, and
yes,
we got back on track. We're resilient, right? If first it doesn't happen, try again. Remember that old thing?
Dr. Lori and I had to do it 3 times. So
the whole show 3 times?
No, not the whole show, but we had to cancel twice. And then the 3rd time's a charm.
Wow.
And she laughed, and you know what? It's pandemic period, and we just got to be resilient and roll with it.
You're not kidding. And I want to get into that a little bit later. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, in my introduction, I was telling our audience that you are an educator. Okay. But before you were an educator, we want to know why you became an educator, because, I've always kind of been fascinated by that, because personally, I don't think I could do it.
Well, it takes a lot of patience. First of all, why I got an education is because I wanted to help kids, and I actually was born with a slight case of cerebral palsy, which affects your motor skills. And you could have a whole podcast on that, but obviously we don't have time for that. So I'll give you the skinny on cerebral palsy. It affects your motor skills. I was born 2 months premature, and my late great father, Joe Nesser, and my mother, Cerebral Nesser, 85 now, God bless her. They raised 5 sons. You have 1 son. Can you believe? Multiply your son times 5.
Yeah, my mom did. My mom actually had 6. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
From 18 until 40.
Good
Started
night.
At 18, last one was 40. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So I wanted to help kids, because when I see a kid in a wheelchair, when I see any person with a disability, that's really hit me home. Still does, obviously. And I wanted to get involved with helping kids because I have a disability. The disability didn't affect my intellect, as the neurologist told Cerebral and Joe Nesser in 1970. When I was playing with blocks at Highland Hospital. Mm-hmm. That's how he figured it out. He said, wow, you know what, Cerebral and Joe, your son, there's nothing wrong with your son. Your son's very intelligent. I can tell by the way he's playing with the blocks. He's building things, but your son has a slight case of cerebral palsy. What's that?
What is that? So in case people don't know, because I'm not even quite sure what that is.
So pretty much it affects it's the cerebral part of your brain, which affects the motor skills of your brain. So the right side of my body is slightly smaller than my left side. So literally my pinkies, if you could see my pinkies.
Yeah. One's definitely longer than the other.
Longer than the other. And so my left foot is 11, size 11, and my right foot is 9.5.
Do you have to buy 2 pairs of shoes all the time?
No. I buy lift. So with that said, I'm using that as a platform for, wow, in the 70s and 80s, I struggled with, do I feel ashamed? Because that's what people did back then, because they didn't know resilience. Mm-hmm. They didn't know be transparent with Tina. They struggled. We struggled, they struggled in those decades with, well, I don't want people to make fun of me. Really, it was, I didn't want people to make fun of me and be different. I didn't want people to treat me different. Mm-hmm. So basketball was my way out. And I actually was a point guard, and I had to eat with my right hand, and I had to do different things around the house with my right hand, so that my right hand motor skills kind of matched up to my left hand. Still to this day, they're not the same, but they're close. And I played the guitar. I played the Takamine guitar, which I picked with my fingers. My parents wanted me to play the Takamine guitar to develop my motor skill set. And Larry Johnson was my teacher, his teacher was Segovia. And Larry Johnson was a big time classical guitarist. And he looked at me one day and he said, Damian, as much as you love the classical guitar, you just don't have the talent.
You just what?
You just don't have the talent.
You just don't have the talent.
Yeah. And then I started.
Were you doing it because you loved the guitar? Or you were doing it to strengthen your hands? Because
a little of both.
Okay.
And then I realized and came to the crashing reality that I just don't have the talent, and I'm giving it up because it's very frustrating.
You're never going to be an Eddie Van Halen.
I'm never going to be Eddie. So I gave my Takamine guitar to Anthony Sanchez in the church that I used to go to in New York, and he is playing it like an angel to this day.
Oh, fantastic. Fantastic. So the doctor says there's nothing, you're a very smart kid, but you failed first grade.
I did fail first grade. In my transparent bio on lifeisaclassroom.net. It was devastating to me because.
What was the reason for that?
I wanted to be first place. There was pressure on me. I think a little from my family because, I have a very successful family that have successful careers, and that was pushed by my parents. You need to get a degree and do good in school. And they weren't overbearing necessarily, but the pressure was there. I have a brother who's a judge, and a brother who's my brother Joe, and my brother Mark owns a salon that was taken over by him and his wife, Mary Elizabeth. And my father and my mother had their own hair salon for 40 years. Successful business. My brother Paul's a salesman, and my brother Matt works in the same school district as I do. He's an athletic director. He's a big time basketball player.
And I read that your mom actually left the hair salon so she could go be closer to you at school and be like the class mom or something like that.
Yeah, she was the class mom outwardly, but as Mother Hen would put it, she was watching Damian every step of the way because I was in they used to call it the low reading group and the high reading group. And you can't say that today because you'll get not necessarily sued, but the parents will call the district and say, hey, you're stressing out my son or my daughter because you're calling them low. You know what I mean? You don't use those terms anymore. So it's intensive reading and intensive math. So I was in the 1970s intensive reading and intensive math of the day.
Oh, so that's why you failed first grade, because you were above your level? Is that what you're saying?
No, I failed first grade because I wanted to be the first one done. And it was overwhelming to me. I didn't understand the work, and I cried every day. And my mother would spend countless hours with me, and cry me to sleep sometimes.
Be the first one done. I'm still trying to get my head around this. Being
the first one done, like I thought I could prove everybody how smart I was.
Yeah.
By being the first one done with classwork.
So you rushed
through my work.
So did I. That's why I wanted to go there, because I was
good.
Yeah.
So Miss Gallia, who's still alive to this day, was my first grade teacher twice, and then my fifth grade teacher. Right. So I had her 3 times, and then 38 years later, when my dad died, she was at my father's funeral. She came up to me, this older woman with gray hair came up to me at St. Louis Church in Pittsford, New York. Shout out to Pittsford, New York. I didn't know who she was.
Right.
She said, "Hi, Damian." And I said, "Who are you?" I said, "Who are you?"
Yeah.
And she said, "I'm Miss Gallia." And I got up, I hugged her, and I bawled my eyeballs out for like 3 minutes.
Wow.
At my dad's funeral.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. The wanting to be first, rushing through it, because I know what it was for me. So was it rushing through because you thought if you rushed through and you were the first one done, it would look like you were the smartest one?
Yes.
Or were you rushing because of fear? Like, get me away from that. Because I used to rush through tests because there was so much anxiety in taking the test, and I just wanted to be done. I could not relax and take my time. Do you have any kind of anxiety, underlying anxiety issues? Great
question. When I was younger, before I was 18, because 18 was a pivotal point in my life, I had a lot of anxiety. I always wanted to be first. I thought, what are people going to think about me if I finished third in the class, with the classwork? And I still communicate with some of my friends from first grade, from the original, from the initial first grade.
Yeah, but that had to come from somewhere. That it was coming from the pressure of your parents, because
Pressure of the parents and pressure
of the parents.
My father couldn't help us with homework because he dropped out in 10th grade, but he was brilliant with money.
Right.
He was brilliant with, buying land and stocks and all that. And he set my mom up very well. But my mom was just really kind of tough, I guess tougher on me because I had cerebral palsy and she didn't want me to be, she wanted me to be successful in my own right, whatever I did. So I think as a mom, obviously, you have a son.
It was coming from a good place, but the translation affected, because you and I are like very similar where that
very,
comes.
Very similar.
It was my father.
Me think of stuff I've never thought before about this whole situation.
And I just recently found out that I have 3 kinds of ADD, which explains so much for me. And one of them is the Ring of Fire. And my girl, I was on the phone with my girlfriend and she says, "You have Ring of Fire?" And I said, "Well, that's one of them." And she says, "Well, my son has it." And she goes, "Tina, do you know anything about it?" I said, "No, I just kind of learned this out and I really haven't done a lot of research." She goes, "Well, put it this way, when we went to go see his doctor, the doctor had taken a picture of his brain and she said, 'This is your son's brain when he's not thinking.' And his whole brain was lit up. And it was just kind of a relief for me because I know how that feels. Like it's just on all the time.
Yeah, right.
So I'm wondering, as an educator, you know more about this than I do. I mean, you're not a doctor. Well, you are a doctor, but not
a medical doctor,
physiology doctor. But, I'm wondering if I didn't have that pressure. I mean, it did serve me in a lot of ways. I will say that. But, that created the anxiety, or I'm thinking it created. I don't think it came out of the womb that way.
Yeah, no question about it. It creates anxiety in kids. I talk to parents all the time, and grandparents and guardians. And it's amazing the myriad of people that I talk to in the day and age we live, especially during the pandemic with, divorce rates are skyrocketing and CPS, and it's really a nightmare.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And, so let me just shout out to the parents, all the parents that are watching, because a lot of parents are probably going to be watching this show.
Yes.
Even though you have the best intentions for your children, if you put too much pressure on them, you are changing their lives. I
agree with that.
I have anxiety now and I refuse to take, pharma, I'm working with my doctor right now I'm doing meditation twice a day, but I think this is just something I'm going to have to live with the rest of my life. I mean, it's there now.
Yeah. I mean, I took Ritalin for a while and because I could focus and it helped me focus.
That really me too. Yeah, exactly. I have to play music in the background. That helps me. If it's silent, I cannot focus.
And so eventually, as I got a little older, I didn't want to take it anymore because I wanted to prove to myself that I didn't need to take Ritalin anymore. And I don't want to depend on Ritalin. I want to be focused. I want to have my routines, which I did. Basketball was a huge, huge outlet for me. The guitar was big until, that crashed and burned because hey, listen, Damian, you got to come to reality. You're not going to be playing in front of hundreds of people or thousands of people. Just go on to something else. And I did. And that's what I tell the kids at school and the parents. And Dr. N, could you give us advice on, well, before I give you advice, let me preface this. I've never been married, don't have any kids, but I'll tell you my 25 years of experience and what I've learned through school and through research, because I do a lot of research. And I give them my professional opinion. And that's very, very important.
Oh, very important. You got to back it up with facts. Yeah, absolutely. Right. So something happened in high school. So high school, you did start partying now and you started using alcohol. What happened there at that point?
I did. I actually went to school with Darcy Glazer, who's the owner of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in Pittsburgh, New York. And some of the heirs of Xerox Corporation, the Wilson family, and several other people. But, so we had money. I drove a hot rod 1973 Plymouth Barracuda, and I used to park it next to Darcy Glazer's vat. Picture this: you're 17 years old and you're rolling up in a Barracuda with Krager wheels, and it's shiny and beautiful, and there's vats and there's different, there's Jaguars, and it's the upper middle class school. Good school. And then we used to go play, pool and billiards in my parents' house during school.
Mm-hmm.
And it just was fun. And I really didn't have to concentrate on school a lot to get through, because I went to a Jesuit school my first 2 years and I had 4 hours of homework a night. And then I just took the easy road. I'm going to skate my junior and senior year. And that's what I did. And it was partying and Harleys and riding on Harleys and just going. I never skipped school.
Mm-hmm.
All that. I never skipped school.
I didn't either. Our lives are. I did not realize how much our lives were so similar.
But because I realized, even though I was partying and stuff, and I went to school high, almost my junior year, I went to school high almost every day.
No,
and that's the first time I've ever admitted to anybody out loud like that.
Yeah.
But you know what? That's part of being transparent. That's part of being
exactly. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Yeah.
And peeling back the onion. Everybody is an onion to some
Mm-hmm.
extent, with layers.
Yes.
And they need to peel that back. Listen, I'm not going to die and you're not going to die without peeling back some of that onion, right?
Well, if you don't peel it back, you're not going to move forward. And if you're not moving forward, you're going to move backwards. You're not going to just stay in one place. This is what people don't understand.
That's right. And as Dr. Taryn Marie would say, and Amberly Lago would say, you're not, I grew up thinking, my parents taught us, and they didn't know, well, you got to bounce back. Guess what? There's no such thing as bouncing back. You got to bounce forward and move forward and progress.
Mm-hmm. You've got to move forward.
And that's life changing. That's a concept that a lot of people, well, I'll just bounce back. You're not going to bounce. You don't want to bounce back. You
have to take the action to bounce back. That's the thing. Have to, it's a mental attitude.
It is.
And it's interesting. So I want to bring this up right now because I was walking today and, I had locked up my back for, I don't think I even threw it out, but I was on my back for 24 hours after a hike on Sunday. Actually, I didn't even lock up till Monday after a couple of calls. And then I hadn't exercised at all. For me, that's like number one. And I can't wait. Well, when you don't do it for a while, then you kind of get late. Like I didn't, now my back's healed. I haven't done anything since last Sunday. And it's, yesterday I probably could have like, well, one more day, just to make sure, this is what my head's telling me.
Yep.
And today I finally realized that part of my brain is just being lazy. I didn't feel like doing it. I just didn't feel like doing it. And if you wait until you feel like getting into action, that's the biggest mistake that most people get. You got to get your head on to get into the feeling to take the action. So you just got to have a serious talking to yourself.
Yeah. I mean, in groups and in individual counseling, and the kids are starting to come to me on their own now, more, certain students. And, it's interesting because what you said is, I always try to emphasize focus. What does focus mean to a kid? It needs to be explained step by step. And I use different examples depending on the kid. Every kid's different.
Mm-hmm.
That's what some counselors that I know from the past and that I've worked with, they made that mistake because you can't pigeonhole any kid. Every kid's from a different scenario.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. So whether it be from grandma, grandpa, guardian, whatever, I mean, it's really, in the pandemic, as I mentioned before, it's just raised every kind of nasty scenario there is to raise. Like, I mean, screaming parents and I've had grandmothers call me up and say, Dr. Ann, I can't do it anymore. What do I do? This is a nightmare.
Yeah.
And it's tough. I mean,
so tell me what you're seeing. What are some of the backlash that you're hearing from the kids, seeing? I mean,
well, I call it the abyss. So I do home visits for my school.
You do home visits?
I do home visits.
It's like in the old day when the doctor used to come to your house.
Oh yeah. I do home visits in some of the neighborhoods I go into. I carry dog treats. I have a pit bull named Bruno, who's very nice, but there are some not so nice pit bulls that are behind fences that will literally take your hand or foot off if you pass that white picket fence.
Yeah.
So I have a dog treat, and I'll just throw the dog treat. But that's my cue for, I'm not really visiting this house. I'm gonna take a day off from this house and come back next time when he's not there.
Okay, so but you have two roles at the school. You are a dean and you're also a counselor. And, you and I were talking before the show and I'm like, what? You're the dean and you take that hat off and now I'm thinking, because they're really opposite is what they are.
So the dean role is, I slap the hand of Sally Sue or John Doe and say, this is the warning. This is called counsel and warn. I'm going to warn you. If you do this infraction again, it's going to be duly noted. I put it in the computer. I literally, state, do you understand? Yes, Dr. N. Okay, I'm giving you a break. Go back to class. And they might get like lunch detention. Okay, nothing big. So I'm not even going to call your mom. You're just going to get lunch detention. So that's my role as a dean. But as a counselor, it's much more broad in the wellness world, where I'm talking to grandparents. I'm talking I've talked to parents before that, were arguing back and forth saying, I don't know if I could stay with my husband. I don't know if I could stay with him anymore. I don't know if I could stay with my wife anymore. It's heartbreaking.
You're dealing with the whole family as opposed to just that. That's brilliant.
Well, because I have the skill set to do it, and I'm not bragging or patting myself on the back at all when I say this, but my administration is very sharp. They know exactly what they're doing. And that's why the district rolled out this new role, because they want me to curve problems. So before, like today, literally today, it went from 3 girls having a little dispute to, wow, it went up to like 8 girls. And we had to figure out who was the culprit. And it took 2 hours. And I got the other dean and one of the other deans involved. And we figured it out. And we squashed it. We call it squashing it. And so it's tough. You got 6 and 7.
Are you finding that the kids are afraid of the pandemic, or are they kind of blowing it off?
Initially they were very afraid. What is this thing? It's like the plague of Egypt. And we don't know what it is. And, people are dying. I've had some of my friends that they're really acquaintances. I've had 2 acquaintances that I had a little interaction with in the past years ago that died of COVID. So it hit home with me. I always tell, we're very strict in our district and school about kids wearing masks.
So you're not closed.
Oh no, we're, as Amberly mentioned when she was on my show, it's like, I think she called California the epicenter of the pandemic.
It really is. Yeah. So
and you live in California.
I live in California too. Yeah. Well, I feel so blessed because my son is almost 17. Okay. Thank God he's not like 2 or 3 or 4. I'm a single mom. I don't know how I'd be able to work if I have to homeschool him.
Oh no.
The other blessing was that he's been going to a smaller school and he's always had the choice to go on. He's the last couple of years has been going to campus, but it's only 3 days a week, but he has the choice to do it. So making the move to online is nothing different for him,
Well, here's the thing that when you just said that, this clicked, and I have to say this, that one of the big problems that educators and districts are facing now and have faced the last couple of months is, wow, most kids are visual learners. It's a fact. It's a research fact. But when you take away that teacher, if you were my teacher and I had to go online, if I was Damian back in the 70s and this happened in the 70s, I would have been a basket case, because I need Miss Tina to look at me in the eye when I'm learning. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And I had Evan Carmichael on the show and he was talking about the same thing, because I listen to audiobooks. He says, and he says, even, when I was interviewing him, he said, Tina, this is so much better than a podcast. The fact that, this will be translated to a podcast, but the fact that he could see me just made him connect. And, I want to go back here for a second. We're talking about kids learning, and you said you were not a good test taker. Neither was I, and the shame you feel if you don't do well in tests, especially those state tests. Because you've never gotten down on my son for that, because I'm just like, he's just, we have to tell our kids, but there are parents that go, study harder, study hard. It could be a lot of things. It could be anxiety.
I can have, there's a lot in that. There's a lot in that question. I can have a whole podcast just on that. As a matter of fact, my second season is going to be a series of different things, depression or education, and you'll definitely be involved with that. So to go to now, back to the past. So I'm going to talk about now. That's just it's amazing how people just struggle with the fact of, wow, you know what? We're going to put these kids in in a computer, in front of a computer. Mm-hmm. We're going to give them, sounded brilliant, right? Mm-hmm. So if you put me back in the 70s and you put Damian, at 12 years old or 11 years old with a computer in front of him. Okay, Damian, you have to learn from, it's called Schoolology in our district. And I'm sure they have similar platforms all over the country and or all over the world, wherever they're having problems with the virus. You can't expect a visual learner who's routined, because the main thing for a teacher is classroom management and making sure you have good lesson plans. Because if you don't have both, you're not going to be a successful teacher. I was a classroom teacher for 19 years at different levels, before I was a counselor. And a dean. So with that said, if you take a kid out of their routine environment, we'll call it, and you place them just like anything, it could be trees and plants. And if you take the trees and plants, even palm trees, I had a palm tree in front of my house that was I think it was a Christmas palm tree, it was called, and it didn't last. It died. Why? Because it wasn't supposed to be in the environment. It was supposed to be in another part of Florida. It didn't work. It didn't live. Yeah. So the same concept and principle goes with kids. You can't take a kid out of their routine environment and expect them to be successful right away. Eventually, some of the kids will adjust and be resilient. Some of them won't. So let me talk about the abyss and why of students and why I go on home visits. I don't know, I'm guesstimating this number. It's not a fact. I'm just guesstimating. There's got to be one to 200 kids or 100 to 150 kids per school, depending on the school. We have a tough demographic, a tough school population where the kids are being raised by grandma or a single mom or a mom that doesn't even care. And that siblings, mommy dearest, are actually, I go real deep with this, but I'm going to be real surfacey because we have other stuff to talk about. I talk to young girls that are running their home, and mom goes out and gallivants. My mom used that word, gallivants around.
You're dating yourself.
And I have to watch the kids, Dr.
Yeah.
And I have
responsibility.
And I have to cook, and I have to do everything. I think of mommy dear. So I'm, oh my goodness, I was thinking about basketball and doing my homework.
Right.
You're thinking about doing all this stuff.
Their childhood is cut short. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So all these kids aren't being successful in their learning because, there was a record number of Fs in our school and such in several schools in our district and around the country. What do we do? Teachers are getting frustrated. Come into my office. I feel like quitting. I don't want to do this anymore. I've never been so frustrated. I'm trying to teach a lesson. I can't do it. Yes, you can. You can be resilient. I know you can. And I'm a cheerleader. Now I'm putting a cheerleader hat on, right?
Right.
I'm a cheerleader. That's my MO because of my disability and because I wanted to prove people wrong, because the doctor said, I'm glad it came to my mind now. The doctor said to Seal and Joe Nesser, your son may never walk normal, may never run. Excuse me. I'm got to hold back a second. I'm tearing up a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
So never do this, never do that. Yes, I am. I am going to do it. So those who are listening with a disability, you can do it. And don't you let anyone ever tell you can't. And
Absolutely.
So whenever anyone makes fun of anyone with any disability, boy, you want to see my Italian side and my Lebanese side come out in full force.
Ooh.
Good night.
What a combo there. Fiery.
Well, my parents as you read in my bio, were dancing to Frank Sinatra.
Yeah,
I don't know if it was new.
Fly Me to the Moon. Was that the song?
Yeah, Fly Me to the Moon.
Fly Me to the Moon. Yeah.
Fly Me to the Moon. Great song.
When you're water
in the Catskills, right? Yeah. My mother's pregnant, and my father probably had a couple drinks. That's why my mom got her license, by the way, years ago, because she didn't want my father to drink and drive before there was even DUI.
Wow, before there was even seatbelts.
Yeah, before there was even seatbelts. and the cigarettes were flying. So my mother, started to have some pains and go into not real labor, but she started to have some pains. And so we got to get to Highland Hospital. So they drove in the Cunningham, what they call it, the Cunningham Happy Days, in the big car, and they drove from the Catskills straight through to Highland Hospital and made it. And my mother had to deliver. They delivered me 2 months premature. So when I see the kids, especially during the pandemic, yes, you can do it. We had tutoring, and we have tutoring going on with teachers. You talk about dedicated teachers.
Let me ask you a question. There's the suicide rate in the pandemic. We're just talking about kids right now. We're not talking about the adults, but has really skyrocketed.
Yes.
Right. So, before the pandemic, I would say I think a lot of that's attributed to neglect or bullying. Now with the pandemic, why would you say that it's rising with the kids?
Well, I mean, when you don't have a strong foundation, I'm not talking about being a perfect parent, because there's no perfect parent.
Okay. Yeah. I see where you're going with this.
But there's got to be routine. There's got to be, just like a classroom. You got to have routine. I could go in a classroom and know in 30 seconons, and for a new teacher that I've never seen before, whether they're a good teacher or whether they're so-so or whether they need a mentor. 3 levels to that. Same thing with a home. The principles are the same. You got to put your kids in a routine. You know that. I'm preaching the choir. You got to have a routine for the kids, because if you don't, they're going to go into depression. They're not going to find their strengths. They're not going to find their gifts in life. I mean, we could go on in another podcast just with this conversation.
Yeah,
really.
Exactly.
And they don't know how to do it. Dr. N, what do I do? They want me to give them a miracle answer.
Right.
Well, Dr. N, can you talk to my daughter or my son about coming to school? There's a huge issue with attendance.
Now, when you do these home visits, do you take the parents aside and talk to them, or is it done all together?
No, I mean, I get the address and I get the information, and there's different scenarios, because some kids are in the abyss mode where we haven't seen or heard from the parent. We haven't seen the kid in 4 months. We haven't talked to the parents in 4 months. We've called on the phone. We've tried to different people.
Can't get them on the phone.
Can't get them on the phone. They're not answering the phone. Then when you go to the door, the other day I was doing visits, and yesterday, and I went to 15 houses, right? 4 of the houses, I know the parents were home, and I know some of the kids were home because I heard
just
talking.
Weren't answering the door. Wow.
Like, I can't hear that.
I want to go back to one thing that I have here in my notes, that I started to touch upon it earlier when you were in high school and you were a partying lot, and then you decided that how did you go from partying to faith and health?
So at 8,
faith and health.
Great question. The pinnacle changing point of my life. And let me say this, and actually, your book really made me think and reflect a lot, which we'll get into. Just amazing, the domino effect, and fear and faith, and wow, free will, and so much loaded in that. And so at 18, long story short, I kind of crashed down to the drinking and the partying and stuff. So my cousin, who's still alive, my cousin Chuck, who's on my mother's side of the family, wanted me to go to church with him, and said, "Hey, you should try our church. It's a community church." And so I did, out in Farmington, New York, back in 1986. And I found my faith, and it's changed my life. We would not be talking, young people, parents, whoever's listening, we would not be talking if it wasn't for my faith and me finding my faith at 18, because I would have took a different route.
And let me tell you something. This is what, I'm so passionate about getting this message into the school systems, right? I mean, math, English, science. Yeah, I think the curriculum, I've said this before, I think the curriculum is outdated. I think that it applies to if somebody wants to be a doctor. I think that's
Absolutely.
great. But why is not fear addressed in school and faith addressed in school and accountability and how you treat yourself and treat other people? And it's like,
well, we have a program we use, Character Strong. I'm not getting, I'm not doing it I'm not getting paid for the plug of Character Strong. It's pretty much
the name of it.
Yeah. Well, it talks about, integrity and forgiveness and honesty.
Yes.
Kids don't know what forgiveness is. They have no idea.
This is the cornerstone. And don't you agree with me, Dr.
No. This could be another podcast.
Huh?
Yeah. Oh, no, this could be another podcast, what we're touching on right now.
Yeah. Okay.
There's so many layers to this, but
I think we're going to have to do a part 2.
Yeah, we might have to do part 2, but pretty much what I'm saying is, even in your book, it really just lit me up. Like, wow, there's so much in here and so much I didn't know myself. And I have a theology degree too. I have a 4-year theology degree, and I integrate that theology without quoting the Bible. I integrate my theology principles all the time, every day. That's why I'm successful with people, because they work.
There you go. You have principles that you live by, right?
So I'm a very principled person. Yep. I have a lot of character that I didn't even think I had before I found my faith. And some of my friends, I have Christian friends at work, but then I have other friends that I'm close with that say, you know what? I don't know how the flip side. I don't know how you can have faith and believe in faith. I don't tell them this when they say that, because I don't want to really get into a deep argument. I want to answer their questions. I don't want to necessarily get into an argument that's going to break off our friendship, because I have a really close knit group of friends. Half of them are Christian, half of them aren't.
Just like you want to talk about politics, I get it.
Right. And I don't talk about politics with them.
Right.
And I don't talk about politics on my show. But I tell them this. To myself, I say, when they say to me outwardly, they say, well, I don't know how you can believe in faith. That's ridiculous. That's asinine. Is it? And I say to myself, I don't know how you can't.
I don't know how you can't. You know what? I was lost until I surrendered to faith. And, at first I had Dr. Erin on the show, and she is the divinity doctor. And so we, she met metaphysics and everything. And I said, I have a,
and that's how you got introduced to metaphysics, I think, or was it your mom or
my mom? My mom was,
that was your mom. That's
far
right.
Ahead of the game,
That's right. Your book's amazing.
Thank you. And it's just, I don't know what I would do without my faith. And you know what, there's a saying, if you don't believe in something, you're going to fall for everything. So if you don't, it's so true, right?
And I have some of my brother's friends say, what do you, and I ask him in a general sense, well, what do you think is going to happen in your spiritual, is there a spiritual life? What happens when we die? Well, we just go into nothingness. I said, so that's your faith. That's what you're putting your bucket in. That's what you believe in. I guess you're right. And I said, I guess I am. Cause I always try to make it light, cause I don't want to, I'm very kid's gloves when it comes to faith, but I still want to be stern and say, if you're asking me a question, I'm going to tell you the truth, but I'm going to say it. I'm going to say it where your palate can take it. I'm not going to necessarily say it in an offenseful way, but hey, the truth hurts sometimes. If you want to respect me as a person, you're going to respect my beliefs, and I'm going to respect your beliefs.
And the older I get, the one thing I know you can't get back is your time and your energy. And I don't waste precious energy on trying to convince somebody.
Can't do it.
If somebody is open-minded, I'm happy to talk all day long. But if you're going to just be debating me and thinking of a way to find me wrong, so to speak, I don't have time for that. I just,
Right. No, you're absolutely right.
I won't engage in political conversations, calmly, but that rarely happens. I'm really trying to see. And you know what? I think you gain more knowledge when you're more neutral and you become the observer.
instead of
Absolutely.
sticking to your point. So,
Yep.
then you become closed-minded and you miss a lot of opportunities.
That's so true. I actually had 4 people, family and friends, 2 and 2, that actually texted me and called me and left voicemails stating their angst to me at the inopportune time of 5 a.m., 4 a.m., 2 a.m., 1 a.m. Yeah, isn't it shocking?
Yeah.
And they had to get it out and tell me how wrong I was because I thought so-and-so, I put some criticism towards so-and-so. I heard through one of your brothers, because I have 4 brothers.
Mm-hmm.
One of them's a judge.
Mm-hmm.
And my family's out in the community and
Mm-hmm.
they can't wait. They want, everybody's dying to find out, what does Dr. N believe? I'm no party. And I want both parties to work together. That's how I give my.
That's how I feel too. I mean, I was raised a certain party, but
if you can't handle that answer, then as my late great father, Joseph Nesser, would say, so be it.
You know what? One thing I'm going to say is I think the people that wouldn't be able to handle that and that are trying to get you onto their side, they're not coming from faith. They're coming from fear. It's all based fear-based.
They're coming from fear. Yeah.
Yeah. So listen, you have a podcast as well, because we've got to wrap it up. You've got a podcast as well.
Yes.
Tell us the name of your podcast.
The name of my podcast is at Dr. N Educate Now Podcast, where life is a classroom. And we have Welcome Back Cotter music in the background. And I thought Gabe.
You're trying to attract the millennials, are you?
Yes, we are. And so actually I do lunches and I got the mic and I do lunches and I always do word of the day with the kids. And I try to be funny sometimes when sit straight with your mask on and making sure the kids routine, even in our cafeteria, they don't face each other in the cafeteria. Everybody faces the same direction. So there's not problems with the pandemic. Brilliant.
Oh, that's a great idea. That's a great idea. Well, I've learned so much today. I really have. And I definitely have to have you on again because we've got to go so much deeper.
There's so many layers that we didn't cover.
Yeah, exactly. But I think we did touch on a few. So, you parents out there that are, again, I'm going to go back to, especially right now when the energy is so dense. Okay. There's so much uncertainty out there. I understand you've certainly got your struggles, but understand that you're forming your children. Okay. And if you are feeling that stress, it does bleed on to them as well. So, you chose to be parents. So you need to be reflective on this and really, not put so much pressure. I mean, you don't want to raise a child that's going to have anxiety their whole life. Trust me, I'm one of those. And it's something that I have to deal with every day. I mean, I'm not complaining about my life, but you know what? Now knowing this, am I going to open my mouth about it? Absolutely. Absolutely. Because, I've said before, you don't want to live in this head for like 10 minutes. You don't want to live in this head. I mean, I've gotten to the point where I have tools and I know how to handle it, but I'm telling you, you can feel like you're going crazy.
No, that's right. You're right. Absolutely.
Okay. Until next time.
Part 2.
Yes, part 2. And thank you so much for tuning in today. If you haven't joined my YouTube channel, please subscribe. It's Tina Marx TV, and my podcast is Transparent with Tina, and we will see you next time.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.